You're listening to Within Tolerance, a podcast for machinists by a machinist. I'm your host, Dylan Jackson from Proteum Machining, and this week I am joined by...
Hi, I'm Stefan Gotteswinter, machinist from Germany, and great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate taking the time, and we talk a bit over the Discord and stuff, but it's nice to get to, see your face and talk to you relative person,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, before we get into your backstory, what do you do now?
I have a day job as a special machine builder. So I work for a very large company here in Germany. That's also the same company I did my apprenticeship in. And I changed into special machine building about a year ago, and we built all of our in-house production equipment. That's mass production. It's mostly what we do is assembly. We have punching and stamping in-house and plastic injection molding. And these parts get also assembled in-house with a very high degree of automation. So it's basically hands-off production. And what we build, the product are switchgear like circuit breakers and RCDs. Ground fault interrupter, I think it's in the US.
Yeah, GFCIs.
Yes, that's all automated built. And yes, the machines are designed in-house, and we get them machined in-house. We have an in-house machine shop, and then it's our job to put it all together, put the electrics in. We have PLC programmers that do all the logic side, and then hopefully it works. And also we set it up in the production line.
Very cool. And then what about your company on this? Because you have a very successful YouTube channel and your own company.
Yes, that's side business of mine. I started it like 7 years ago. I did machining for a long time before as a hobby, just like model engineering. But I found out that people want parts. And I started small, made one-offs and small production runs of just simple parts. Registered a company, so it's legal for me to do it. And what I do now is mostly prototyping, small production runs. I support R&D. I work with an engineer who does a lot of work for science and research companies. So he does the designs. I do the machining side. And that's been great. It will definitely expand.
That's great. Well, you said, you started as a hobby. So let's get into your backstory. How did you get to where you are now?
So my dad was a tool die maker. And we always were doing stuff around the house and fixing things. And I was always tinkering with stuff as a kid, but he never wanted me to get into the trade.
Really?
During the time he was in the trades, it wasn't paid very well. And you had weekly hours of hell, like 60, 70 hours a week. And he wanted something better for me, for lack of a better term. But school was not exactly for me. I was never the best in school, and I ended up doing an apprenticeship in mechatronics. So I'm not a machinist by trade, but the apprentice master that we had was also a tool and die maker. That seems to be a recurring theme with me. And he had a very large focus on just the mechanical side of things. But we also learned PLC programming, wiring, hydraulics and pneumatics. So we are like an industrial Swiss Army knife. And after apprenticeship, I was always in the same company. I never changed company so far. That's almost 16 years now.
Wow.
I started as a lab tech doing electrical testing on our own products. Then I switched into a machine shop that did the support for the test labs. That's where I learned CNC and CAD/CAM side of things. In-house CAD package for us is Creo, formerly a pro engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And did a lot of CNC there. Started on Datron machines. We had 2 Datron routers and an old CNC tool room mill, a Deckel FP2NC. That were great machines to learn on, very rugged machines.
Yeah, I think I've seen an FP2 before, and they look pretty amazing.
It's a very stout machine. It's not the fastest machine. It's all dovetail ways, 6,000 RPM spindle, but it's a good machine, very precise. After a few years in that shop, I had the opportunity to go machining only. They were looking for a CNC prototype machinist in-house that's exclusively doing prototype machining on a Datron M10 CNC router, and mostly plastic. So engineer comes up with an idea, with a new product idea or modification on an existing part, and just make it happen. That's where I got a lot of the dirty prototyping tricks and setup. Also, my large dislike for soft jaws and vices came from there, because it takes too long.
Yeah, well, and plastic is tough with soft jaws because it's really easy to bend the parts.
It's moving a lot. We did a lot of one-time use fixtures. Just mill a negative into a block of plastic and glue the part in. Fastest way. I did that for 8 years, and I almost got a little bit bored because it's 3-axis machining, and you can only do that much. And then I changed into special machine building because my boss needed somebody there, and I was happy to change.
It's cool that most people, I think, leave the companies they start with because there's a lack of opportunity. And it sounds like they've really given you a lot of opportunity to change it up when you need to.
Yes, that was always the option there. Also, when I changed to part-time, it wasn't even a question if it was possible, only how we're going to do it. Went one day to my boss, said, I would like to work a little bit less. Like from 36 hours down to 28. And he was like, yeah, not a problem.
Wow. That's amazing. That shows that they value you as an employee as well. They don't want to have to replace you, so they'll take what they can get.
That's how it felt to me too. So I'm also very grateful for that opportunity.
That's great. So what does special machines mean? Because if you guys are building machines in general, are you building like one-off machines that they're testing, or like what kind of machinery are you making that's outside of the norm for your company?
So everything we build is really special. Imagine you have a small metal, let's say a small leaf spring, maybe 5 millimeters long. And you have a pile of them, and you need to assemble it into a device. That's what our machine will do. We will have a feeder bowl that sorts the springs and separates them so they are oriented, and then we will have either a number of linear axes or a robot that takes the spring, moves it in position, and assembles it.
Okay.
And that's a lot of things we do. Also, we do automated soldering.
Oh, cool.
In cases we have a small PCB in the device, we need to place it in there, attach maybe wires to it, and solder it in place and things like that.
Are the machines you're working on going directly into production, or are they prototypes for production machines down the line?
No, those are production machines. We build really the one-off. We do in our shop where we build them, we do the testing of the machine with with a qualification if it's working good enough or has a too high of a failure rate. And then we move it in full production.
That's really cool. That must be really gratifying to, see something that you worked on all of a sudden go into production and make thousands of parts.
It's very rewarding when we walk through the production line. Oh yeah, we built that, that. It's also an ongoing nightmare, to be honest. It's a never-ending nightmare. You saw the machine and you think, oh, that thing is going to be great. This is going to be so cool. And there are just problem by problem that you need to solve. The engineering is usually pretty good, but in reality, there are always problems.
Right. Yeah, that seems to be a common theme with all of my guests who deal with automation, is that it's not the things you think of that are going to be the problems. It's like the secondary or tertiary things that end up being the real problem down the road.
Absolutely. Also, there are design issues in CAD usually where you have a collision between parts that just slips through.
Right. So how long is the scope of a typical project for you? Like, are you 6 months per build, or is it, real quick turnaround, or a year, or,
Usually about 3 to 4 months from the beginning to end. The machine frames are usually built out of aluminum extrusion, so like the 80-20 extrusion-ish.
Yeah.
Or we
Makes sense.
Or we have frames welded if it's a heavier machine with larger robots.
Okay.
Then we will have a square tube steel frame welded and machined, but that's done outside. That's done by a chop shop.
That's cool, though. That means, 3 or 4 machines a year that sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, that machine is built by one person. Usually.
Oh, wow.
So we usually build about 3 to 4 machines at a time.
Oh, wow. So you got a lot working all at once. That's great.
Yeah. So I'm currently building a brush deburr machine. So it's deburring parts that come out of a injection molding machine. Runs them through a die that punches through the holes where you have a burr left. Then we have brushes on the top and bottom of the part that remove any remaining flashing and burrs.
That's super neat. Wow. Well, we have a ton of questions, so I say we dive into some of those, because that should take us through. Anything I could ask, I think has already been asked. So from the Patreon, David Ron asked, "Is the model pistol project truly dead?" And he also thanks you for sharing so much information and technique.
So the model pistol project, which was a M1911A1, the standard U.S. Army military Colt, it is dead. It takes a ton of time to build it. I started it because I wanted just to work on tiny parts and just hone my skills. But in the end, it just takes a ton of time. And since I started doing outside jobs, I don't have the time for it. And also the videos attracted a lot of nut jobs in the comments, to be honest.
I can understand that for sure. Yeah, that's so. How much time do you spend on YouTube? And like, how much does because you just released 2 weeks ago that was like 26 minutes. So like, how much time actually goes into making a 26-minute video?
So during filming, I record about 10 times the footage that I need for the video. So I need to go through that footage, which is already then like 260 minutes. And about the same time for editing again.
Oof. That's tough. So do you still, it looks like you still enjoy it though.
Yes, absolutely. It's really fun. It's very rewarding, and reading through the comments is usually very nice. There is the occasional pooping on my porch comment, but I deal with those very, very radical.
I was just listening to the Safety Third podcast, which is like William Osmond and Backyard Scientist.
Yeah.
And they were saying that YouTube's gotten a lot better about filtering out really negative stuff or like, super hateful comments too.
Yes, that's true. But still, really, one bad comment can ruin the whole experience of making a fun video for you. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, he actually released a video recently talking about that, how like you could have 10,000 comments that are all positive and just like 1 or 2 negative, and it still feels like a lose.
Yes. I can feel him very much.
That's tough, but I'm glad that it's still gratifying and that you're still wanting to do it, because you do share a lot of great information.
Yeah, thanks. I really try to keep up my 1 to 1.5 videos per month. So, and it's really fun to do it.
That's great. I mean, that's a good amount of time too per month. I mean, you're talking what, 10 hours, 12 hours? Yeah. Like that's a lot. So I appreciate it, and I'm sure everybody listening appreciates it. Let's see. Next one was from Designing Berlin. He asked, "What happened to the Home Shop Machinist podcast?"
So, for those who don't know, the Home Shop Machinist podcast was the first machining podcast.
It was. I totally agree.
It was Justin, Max, and me. It was Justin, Max, and later me. And we're still doing 1 episode per year.
That's good. We haven't released one in 2021, so we should expect one, right?
I hope so. We still have a bit over a month left.
Oh, maybe we can peer pressure Justin to get in on it.
Well, life happened for all of us, so that's tough.
Yeah, definitely. I believe me, you're preaching to the choir. I know how much time it can take. Yeah, it's really tough to keep up with, for sure. Tux Garage asked, "How big is your shop at home?"
So he asked in square feet. Since I don't speak banana, I needed to use Google Trends, the Google calculator. It's about 23 square meters. That's about 250 square feet, if my math is correct. And that's basically the main shop. I have still the basement, which is another 25 square meters.
Okay.
Where I keep the TIG welder, the sandblasting cabinet, the hydraulic press, and stuff like that. Just a little bit of support equipment.
Well, and you recently added another room upstairs, right?
Well, that's the 23. That's that's the ground level shop now. That's where I have everything: the manual machines, the CNC, CAD/CAM workplace, the grinders, basically everything.
That's great. How do you separate grinding from the rest of the machinery? Like, how do you keep everything clean?
Well, I have the dirty machines like the grinders, and the CNC. I consider the CNC router a dirty machine.
Okay.
In a separate part. And the manual lathe and the manual mill, which are in my mind clean machines in the smaller part of the shop. That's also where the surface plate and the manual, the workbenches.
Yeah, I find keeping a surface plate clean next to machines is tough. Like we just got a big one, and like I've got a cover for it, but even with the cover on, I think it might be flaking off underneath the cover or something, because every time I pull the cover back, there's like I can feel grit on it, and so I have to wipe it off and clean it, and
yes. I usually have a rubber mat on it because it's also another horizontal surface where it just stores things when I don't need it.
My business partner is constantly making fun of me because when we got it, I said, we're not going to use this as a table. And then it is constantly full of measuring tools and parts in process. And he's like, hey, what happened to that not a table thing? And I'm like, okay. You got me.
Just make a pyramid-shaped cover and you can't put things on it.
There you go. That's what I got to do. Well, we just got the that digital height gauge. So on one side, there's a big tented, cover over that, and so I can't put anything on half of it at least.
Did you get a Trimos?
I got a Tessa height.
Oh, that's on my list too.
Yeah, we had one at my day job, and I used it more than the manual CMMs. Like I have a manual CMM, but like for checking hull position in 2 axes or hold a hole or something like that. It's just so much quicker to go and calibrate that real quick and then check stuff than to go and actually set up datums and go through the whole rigmarole.
Oh, that's good to hear. That's definitely on my list of things to get.
I will say, if you can, make sure to get one with the air pump too.
So it floats on the table?
Yeah, you push a button and it turns on the little electric pump and floats, and then it drops. Because when you're trying to check stuff down inside parts, sometimes moving the part is not always easy, but you can kind of float the height in there and then check it. Let's see. Ethan Gibson asked, how much of your experience in the home shop has transferred into your work and vice versa?
That's a good one. It's switching back and forth all the time. The real precision work I learned basically at home, but a lot of all of my CNC and CAD CAM experience comes from work.
Okay.
So I learned basically CAM on the job. I never had real training classes in CAD or CAM at work, but I just was taught by coworkers, and then good luck. I did it on my own.
Well, and you're back to using Fusion at home now, right?
Yes. That's So I bought BobCam.
Mm-hmm.
And while I tried it out. It worked well. The workflow is a bit ancient, but it works well. But toolpath generation when you have a ton of C layers is relatively slow. So slow that I got annoyed and tried going back to Fusion. And Fusion was 10 times faster, just toolpath generation. So that's what I'm using now.
I was super surprised. I remember when you posted about that, and I was like, I couldn't believe how long just a simple, it was like a pocket routine or something was taking.
It was not even an adaptive toolpath. Yes, it was a 3D pocket.
Yeah, that's crazy. I know. I mean, I'm not giving them any excuses, but I know I've had some weird models from customers too that do the same thing. Like they'll have one corrupt surface or something, and then when I delete it and replace it and then reheal the model, it's like, oh, now everything's happy and works again.
Yeah, but that was a real clean model out of Inventor.
Oh wow!
And the guy who did, there were no crazy freeform surfaces on it, just 2.5D. But that really annoyed me a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, Bobcat's not cheap, or at least not as cheap as Fusion. So
it was a good chunk of money, and I still have it. I made good money with it, but might be time to move on.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see.
And Fusion was on sale anyways, like it is always.
Right. Yeah. There's a few things out there. Haas machines are the same thing. Like if you pay sticker price, you're not looking hard enough. Yeah. Zeke Johnson asked, what's another niche machine like the hardness tester you just got that you would like to cram in your shop?
So I like niche machines. The hardness tester is definitely one of them. I have a toolmaker's microscope, which is basically a microscope with an XY table that you can use for measuring. But I would like to have a profile projector, a shadow graph, especially when doing tool grinding or any grinding in general. It's very useful. Gives a little bit better image on the contour of the part than a microscope. But those things are usually massive and take a lot of space. There is a benchtop one from Mitutoyo.
Mm-hmm. The PH12 or something like that. PH10.
Okay.
Something like that.
But those usually go for a good chunk of money.
Yeah.
So maybe not in the near future.
Those are that's one of the last things that I want to get for my shop as far as metrology goes. Now that we have the digital height gauge, I think I really want a OGP, or QVI is the brand. And they make I think they make them still in New York, and they are some of the best optical comparators I've ever used. It's insane how accurate they are.
Do they have a digital support where they can do edge recognition, or is it truly just an optical?
The one I used was with a full DRO with edge detection, and
Cool.
both of the stages are motorized, so you just use a little joystick to go up and down. And but they, like, the guy who came out to calibrate it said it was the most accurate optical comparator he had ever calibrated. Like, I think it was accurate to within a tenth or two in both axes.
Oh well, I'm used to the old ones with where you still had the overlays on Mylar put on the large screen and hand cranked to your position.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy with one of those, but like, I've seen a few used OGPs come up for between $5,000 and $8,000, which isn't terrible when you have motorized stages.
That's reasonable.
Yeah, and what I really like about theirs is they use a green light instead of a white light, so the edges are very, very visible. But we'll see. I think I posted about it on the Discord. They also just came out with a C Vision system, they call it. It's like a optical comparator and a Vision CMM had a baby. Like, it looks like an optical comparator, but it uses a camera instead. And then the software that comes with it can also pick up, bolt circles. It can pick, it can give you true positions. It'll actually do edge clarification and take away the depth from your edges. But they're a lot more expensive. I got a quote on even the benchtop model, and I was like, oh, that's a little out of my price range right now.
A little bit like the Keyence measuring systems.
Yeah, similar. They just have a lot bigger stage. Like, they have the same size stage and weight capacity as an OC. So I think you can still put 150 pounds on them or something like that. Wow. Yeah, bigger than anything I would put on there for sure. Let's see. Tom at Inspiration Metalworks asked, well, you already talked about working part-time. He said, how's that going? But it sounds like it's been a fantastic change.
Well, it has been one of the better decisions in my life. And yes, I'm really grateful that my employer gives the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It allows me to take on more work and more complicated work, and also to grow my shop machine-wise.
Definitely. So, speaking of hard parts, his other question was, is there a part or a job that you have refused to attempt?
Not really. Sometimes I get parts that are really designed so they cannot really be made on machines. Maybe metal sintered or something like that, but just not designed to be manufacturable. Then I just say no. Doesn't make sense. Sometimes you can split the part up in multiples and either braze or weld them together or bolt them together. But then it's also a price question. Right.
Yeah. I think many of my listeners and me as well have all seen parts where you're like, I mean, if you want to pay for EDM work or something like that, then sure, we could try this, but I don't think you wanted this.
Do you really need a sharp internal corner right there?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and they're like, oh no, it's just clearance for a bolt or something. You're like, oh, great. Okay, thanks. Rohan from Australia asked, what drives you to run your own shop when you have a day job as a machinist?
So I don't have a day job as a machinist anymore. Well, we have a manual lathe and a manual mill in our department for modifications, and if you have to make a simple bracket or something like that, but I'm basically not a machinist anymore. What drove me to do parts in my own shop, or what drives me to do parts there, is really I can do the parts like I want to do. There is no foreman who tells me, yeah, this is a mill part. You don't need to grind that. But I can't decide if it's better to grind it because it's faster, it's easier to set up or something like that. And it's way more fun that way. I can work to my own schedule. When I decide to check my phone 15 times in an hour, that's what I do.
Right. Yeah. The autonomy of working at your own shop. Like I used to. I mean, we were talking before the podcast. I'm now 19 days into full time, which has been amazing. But even when I would go to my shop after working a long day, it was like a breath of fresh air. I was like, oh, I can relax. Like this is now my domain.
Yes, even when I only go for like half an hour into the shop after work, and I'm not really wanting to do customer parts, I just put stuff away, clean up. It's just being in the space.
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually done that a few times where I have forced myself into the shop after work, and it's like, you know what, I'm not going to make any parts, but I'll spend an hour cleaning and just feel better about the shop tomorrow.
Turn on some music and sort a drawer.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I mean, I would imagine in a shop that size, cleanliness is super paramount because a mess in that size really shows itself.
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes when I work on a project with a lot of material removal, it gets out of hand. I don't have large chip bins, and it just piles up. But I make sure to clean up very, very regularly.
Yeah, I think chips are the Achilles heel of most shops. Like I have 1,000 square feet, and I'm getting to the point now where like yesterday I had to tell Brad, my business partner, I was like, hey, we need to do a scrap run because I am out of space to put chips anymore. He's like, oh yeah, we probably should do that. Like I've got three or four large industrial trash cans, more or less, and they are stuffed to the brim, and it's like, all right, we've got to get this out of here. So I definitely understand. Cyrus Lloyd asked, what makes Sabaton the best machining music?
Well, it's metal and history. So Sabaton is very well. Sabaton is a metal band, power metal band. They take historical events, mostly war, and create a song around it. No matter which side or era, you will find modern era, World War II, World War I, and even ancient times in their songs, and it's just good music.
I had never heard of it until you guys were posting it in the Discord. I was like, what are they talking about? So Josh NH Micro. Yes, he trolled you, and I thought he also submitted some great questions. So first, the troll question: did you consider a used 618 Okamoto for your surface grinder?
Yes, I considered it, even a new one, because they are not that expensive. It's like, well, they are expensive, but not in the grand scheme of things. But it's a very heavy machine, a very large machine. And I don't have the space to put it anywhere.
That makes sense.
I think we'll talk about new machines later. But the machine I bought is, in the end, a little bit more expensive than a new Okamoto 618.
Oh, wow. Okay. His next question was, what's the biggest skill you've learned from your day job?
Improvise. Well, we are a large company. We have a lot of money, but still we are improvising all the time. It started when I was in prototyping. I had to improvise with work holding, with the machine we had. I had to use the Datron to machine a lot of steel and do a lot of hard milling on it, which is not really made for it, but it does it well enough. We had to improvise with rigging. Now in the special machine division, we have like hand-operated forklifts and pallet jacks, but no crane. And some things are pretty heavy. Yeah. So it's a lot of improvising on our side. That's really the biggest thing I learned there.
I totally understand that. Going back to Ethan Gibson's question of like what experience in your home shop transferred into your work. So my most recent job was production machining. And so a lot of them, we're very used to like establishing like rote things rather than improvising. And me coming from a prototyping background and owning a prototyping shop, like I'd come up with a solution in 5 minutes that they would take hours to get to as they like slowly, methodically work through it. And so I see, you know, if anybody listening ever wants to get a crash course in making do and getting it good enough, go work for a prototype shop, because you will, you know, when you only have 2 parts to work for, it doesn't need to be good. It just needs to be good enough.
Yeah, the setups on the CNC router consisted of old gauge blocks and super glue in a lot of times. Just holding gauge blocks to a grinding vise, making spacers, and conforming to a weird shape. Takes 5 minutes, and it's torn down in 5 minutes too.
Right. Oh yeah. You learn how to use, you know, can't twist clamps and all kinds of crazy stuff. And you're like, well, you know, I can't hit it with my hammer and have it move, so it'll probably work for this one up. Like, I won't do it again, but.
And the worst thing is if that job comes again.
I've had a few now where I'm like, I'll never see this job again. I don't write any notes. I'm like, you know, I'll file this into the delete folder in my brain. And then it comes back 2 years later and I'm like, oh shoot, how did I do this? What crazy thing was I doing?
At some point I took pictures of every setup for that exact reason. I just took out the phone, took a quick photo, and had something to look at if it ever came back.
I've done that with some, and my problem is like I need a better way to organize them, because I'll take pictures and then they'll just sit in my gallery, and it's like, you know, I get the job back 2 years later. I'm like, what was the date on that? And I have to like go look up quotes and stuff, and then try to like look through with 1,000 photos trying to find them.
In my own shop, I do the same. I take photos of everything, just due to being a social media person. I take photos of everything, and I sort them on the PC to the customer or to the project. Same folder where the drawings go and the quote and parts orders or material orders. Also, the photos will go in.
That's smart. Yeah, I need to start doing that now that I have a little more time, because that's... So actually, speaking of that, has a YouTube video ever saved you when a repeat job has come up? Or footage that you've taken? Have you ever had to go back and look at footage you've taken?
Not footage, but photos often.
Okay. Let's see. Josh's next question was, what's your favorite esoteric machine?
Oh, it's all tool room machines that we like. not production machines. It's all tool room machines. But the coolest machine out there is probably the EVAC WS11 grinder. It's a tool color grinder for very small tools. I think the maximum diameter of it is 20 millimeters. It's a completely manual machine. It can do everything. I will find the link to the video for the machine. You can grind a reamer from solid stock. You can create a perfect ball shape on it. You can grind internal diameters. You can grind slots.
Wow.
It's just a very esoteric machine. Unfortunately, they stopped last year building it.
Oh, no. That's too bad. I'm guessing something so versatile is probably also fairly expensive.
I think it's way more expensive than something like a Haas VF2.
Oof. Yeah, but I mean, if you have the use for it, it makes sense.
Yes, you will find them in a tool grinding shop. Will probably have one. Somebody like Kenna Metal in there, where they make custom tools, probably has one of these.
Well, maybe one day one will pop up and you'll be able to snag it.
They show up used from time to time.
There you go. Maybe one day.
Yeah.
Josh's next question: what is your favorite measuring tool, and what is your most used measuring tool?
So those go hand in hand, and it's basically the Mitutoyo 150 millimeter calipers, digimatic. It's every time I need new calipers, I think I should try something else, and then Yeah, just order the Mitutoyo ones.
Yeah, it's hard to get away with how, I mean, they're just an industry standard for a reason.
They have just the perfect haptics. It's just a nice caliper. They all need adjustment out of the box for some reason on the slideways. I don't like how they set it from factory.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like them a little bit on the tighter side.
Okay, so you're adjusting the 2 screws and the top of the...
Yes.
Okay.
Also, I started to, when I get a new set, to do a full deburr and round over on all the non-measuring edges.
They are sharp. I have stuck myself quite a few times with the butt end of them.
Put a nice 0.5 millimeter radius on all it with a small Kratex wheel and a die grinder, and just makes it nicer. And the second one is the 25 millimeter quantum mic.
I am right there with you.
It's so fast. It's so much faster than the regular one. The regular 25 millimeter Mitutoyo digital mic is also very nice. Mm-hmm. But nobody got time for 0.5 millimeter thread pitch on a micrometer.
Yeah. And if you're listening and you're thinking, what are these guys talking about? They're so full of it. I felt the same way until I bought one. And then I was like, well, this is the only mic I ever want to use again.
Yeah, every other mic is stupid except for the Mitutoyo fast mic. Have you ever used that?
I haven't. I've heard they're pretty amazing.
It's with 15 millimeter of thread pitch.
Jeez.
But
that almost sounds too fast. Like I feel like I run it into the part.
It's really weird measuring with it. But they work. I tried one. It really works well, but they're rather expensive.
So before we jump onto his last question, you mentioned a Kratex wheel and a deburr tool. Can we talk about your Evo?
Oh, the NSK Evo.
Yeah. Well, I want to make sure we bring that up because that thing is so cool.
I have a thing for die grinders. I think since I do a lot of bench work, deburring, and just refining, I need a good die grinder. I used to use a Biax air die grinder, which is a very nice tool, but it's loud and takes a ton of air. And I think this year I broke down and bought a NSK Evo micromotor. That's basically a Dremel, just better in every regard. It's quiet. It turns up to 40,000 RPM, has a quick change collet with no tools. Very good run out on the collet. It's just a joy to use. You can run it from 1,000 RPM up to 40. And also have the option to run it in reverse. For example, when you use a small grinding tool, a diamond tool, and you run into a weird climb cutting action situation, you can run it in reverse. And it's expensive. It's really expensive. It's like 1,500 euros. But I regret nothing.
Yeah, I think Adam... Yeah, I think Adam had one or has one, and I saw his, and I started going down that rabbit hole, and I was like, "Oh, this thing's so cool!" Because there's like a million attachments for it too. Like there's like a little belt grinder, there's 90-degree heads, there's everything.
The filing machines, linear and traversing filing machines. You can get right angle heads for the die grinder. It's very versatile, and Adam was also the one who pushed me over the edge to finally get one.
Yeah, it's filed in my head in that category of I don't need it right now, but man, I want it so bad. Like it's so cool. I love the giant dial to adjust the speed. Yes. Like the ergonomics of it and the design of it is fantastic.
It's very well made. Well, that's NSK for you.
Right. Yeah, I expect an amazing electric motor from NSK, but I was really happy to see how well the base and all that was designed as well.
Yes, get one if you can.
And then Josh's last question was, what project in your career are you most proud of being a part of?
That's unfortunately one where I cannot show pictures of, but it was a large machining project in my own shop where we did a large number of small parts out of gold, 99.999% pure gold, machined on the CNC router, did some press forming on it. It was very thin. It was 0.2 millimeters, I think.
Oh, wow. That's
Thick
super
sheet
thin.
metal, all super glue work holding. Press forming, I built the die to form it, also polishing on these parts and measuring. And that was some electron beam part.
That's as much as you can say.
Yeah, that's
I gotcha.
as much as I'm comfortable saying.
Well, let's go into machining gold then. How did you recover chips? How does it cut? I think that very few of us have that opportunity. So if I can learn it and absorb it and keep it in the back of my mind for that one day, I would love to hear.
I think it's the most ductile material metal out there. So it's super soft. It deforms. It chip welds instantly.
Oof.
What I did, I glued the sheets down. I built a dam around it, and I filled it with cutting oil. So I was constantly undercutting oil with a 0.5 millimeter 3-flute end mill, and I cut through the material in one pass at a very slow feed. Actually, it was about 20,000 RPM and maybe 100 millimeters per minute. So very slow.
Yeah, that is incredibly slow.
But the cutter held forever, and the sidewall finish, which was critical, was very good, and we did get 0 chip welding that way.
Okay. Was there a reason you chose 3-flute instead of like an O-flute cutter?
Yeah, because I'm cheap.
Okay.
That's the 3-flute cutters is my go-to for everything, and they're very reliable and work very well. I dislike the O-flute cutters or single flute cutters.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like them very much. I never ran them on the Datron very much. I don't like them. I don't like the noise of them.
Okay.
I always had better results with 2 or 3 fluters.
That's a good lesson, because I know that Datron seems to push the single flutes quite a bit. So that's interesting.
Yeah, because they have a super large chip space for the chip, of course.
Right.
So for roughing, they work well. But they're loud.
Yeah. It's the same kind of noise, just scaled down as like a shear hog, where you got that one flute constantly doing all the work,
hammering.
Yeah.
So yeah, the 3-flute worked very well. It didn't fill up with the gold chips. For chip collection, it ended up being a cutting oil gold sludge. So I put all that in a large bucket and shipped it back to the engineer who also supplied the material. And I think he washed it out with like dozens of liters of acetone.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
To separate the gold from the cutting oil.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Well, it sounds like it worked out well. I would not have thought to dam in a whole bunch of cutting oil. That's a really smart way to do it.
That really worked well, and probably the only way to do it on a reliable way without flood coolant.
Right. Yeah, I would have. The only thing I thought was MQL with like alcohol or something, but it sounds like that might not even be enough.
Yeah, that might have worked, but since the cycle time on these parts was insane long, I would die of alcohol poisoning.
Okay. That's awesome.
So, yeah, that was a fun job.
That's super cool. Thomas Likes Light asked, what are your favorite machining, making, engineering German words that frustratingly don't have a good English translation?
Ha! That's funny. Mostly the German cursing. But technical English has a pretty good term for most things we have here. but interestingly enough, not the other way around. There is, for example, no good word for a 1-2-3 block in Germany.
Really?
No. 1-2-3 blocks are uncommon here in general.
I'm very surprised.
If you think about it, it's really odd because it's a very useful tool, but, well, they're not common here.
Right. Well, I would have thought it would have been like a 25, 50, 75 block
Would
or
make
something.
sense, yes.
Yeah.
And there are places who sell metric versions of it, but it's just not very common.
Huh. That's really interesting. Yeah, that's similar to gauge blocks. I would have thought that would have been universal.
It would make sense, but there are really cultural differences between like Europe and, well, even Great Britain and the US. Same for surface grinders. In the US, you have all these nice small Herrick surface grinders, the 612 and the 618 manual without anything on them. And something like that does not exist here.
Really?
Very, very little numbers. I have a small French-made surface grinder manual, but those are very rare.
Huh.
If you go in a tool die shop here, you will find a automatic hydraulic surface grinder usually.
Which I imagine, if you have the room, is kind of a nice used market to go into. But if you don't, I imagine it's hard.
Or the Herrick punch grinding fixtures.
Mm-hmm.
Super uncommon here. Took me forever to find a used one here.
Wow. That's so interesting. It's things like that I never would have thought don't translate between all machinists, you know?
Yeah, I didn't realize that in the beginning too, but when we need a round part ground in here, it's going on a cylindrical grinder, not on a surface grinder with spin fixture.
That makes sense. Yeah, I guess I understand that.
Well, but the spin fixture makes a lot of sense for a one-off part too, I think. Especially if you need.
I think they're amazing.
I love mine.
Yeah, like I mean, I've never used one to grind a customer part, but like I've used them a ton at the first shop I worked at to relieve end mills and cutters, and they work great for that. So I would imagine you would want one. Farbro Bjorn asked, "What's your long-time plan for your home shop? Space, size of machinery, type of work, etc."
Well, I do want to expand a little bit. I do not want employees because that's annoying. I have the room to build a proper building for a shop on my property. So that would be a nice thing.
Okay.
That's planned sometimes in the future. And of course, a VMC at some point in time.
So how's the used market for VMCs there? What does a common used VMC look like if you would buy used, I guess?
Well, a clapped out DMG Mori.
Okay.
that has seen 50 years of production. We see a lot of not robo drills. There are production machines for the car industry here. With they have a basket tool changer usually.
Oh, a Chiron?
Chiron, yes. Lots of Chirons. We see some Heckler and Koch machines.
So those are really interesting because I had never heard of them, and then I think you brought it up on the Discord.
Yeah, there are tons of them out there. It seems like Heckler and Koch designed and built them for in-house use, especially as drilling machines. When they did the G3, the MP5 with the sheet metal bodies, with the stamped sheet metal parts for drilling and some milling operations on them. And they are set up as, they have a very, very large X travel, and you can run them in a split mode where you set up on one side of the travel and it's machining on the other side.
Oh, it like duplicates?
Yes.
How interesting. That's kind of cool.
So they're really production machines. And They show up on the used market all the time, but they're huge machines. They have, I think, almost 2 meters of travel in X.
Oh, wow. That's a ton.
So, yeah. But in general, you see a lot of used machines. Like 10 years old is a good age for a machine that you see here. And also a lot of old tool room CNC mills.
Okay.
So no enclosure, no tool changer, fairly slow spindle, but with a gear drive. So a ton of torque.
What would you be looking at when you have the space?
A Haas mini mill.
Oh, okay.
To be honest, it's I never ran one, but it seems like a logical solution for me. It has tool changer, it has an enclosure, and can run flood coolant. Adam seems to like his.
Yeah, Adam and Danny both have one, and they seem to really
Danny
like
has
them.
one too.
Yeah.
So that's enough of a makes sense, and it's really not that expensive.
No, not at all.
For a new machine.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that makes sense. How is Haas in Europe in general? Is the support as easy to come by and sales and all that?
A good friend of mine had bought a used Haas TL2, the tool room lathe.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a Haas tech to set it up and give him some help with pointers and also get some replacement parts. And what he told me, support was very good. He didn't have any issues getting the parts in time, and also the technician was there rather quickly, which cannot say for major German brands in general.
Yeah. If it's the same major German brand I'm thinking of, we don't have good support from them either. So it's okay. That's a universal thing, it sounds like, unfortunately. Next question from Moose Engineering was beer, favorite brews, what makes German Pilsner so much better than a Pils anywhere else?
Whoa, I don't drink pills, so that's a problem now. Usually I like a Guinness and Kilkenny, both Irish beers, which makes me probably heroic as a Bavarian even.
Uh-huh.
But we have a lot of good beers, but I can't name one off the top of my head right now. Just buy a German beer. You will not be disappointed in general.
Okay. Yeah, it's actually funny he mentioned Pilsner because my business partner, he brews a lot at home, and his most recent fascination is a Czech Pilsner, which I guess is
it.
Yeah, well, it's much more hoppy, and they do this pour where it's like a thick foam. It's not like a head, but it's like they actually pour half and half of this thick, like milky foam. And so he's been like, oh, I want to try that, but like the heads for his keg to do that are like $400, and he's like, I'm interested, but I'm not that interested yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, that's interesting. Friedrich Winkler asked, what material gives you the most joy at small scale?
So I guess that's for small parts. I like plastic and tool steels, or steels in general. I'm not a big fan of aluminum. Aluminum? Well, it's soft, it dents, it scratches very easy. It's gums up cutters. To me, it's a very annoying material. On tool steels, you can get away with a lot.
So I guess in general, what is your favorite material, period? Like if somebody gave you a part and you could choose anything under the sun, what would you choose right off the bat?
Well, Delrin.
Okay.
If it's not a large plate.
Yeah. Yeah. The warping is real with Delrin at large scale.
Or, well, let me rephrase. If I don't have to pay for the material, it's probably PEEK with 30% glass.
Oh, okay.
It's very stable. It machines beautiful, gives crisp edges, no burrs. It's not very hard on cutters. Well, it will It will grind down your end mill, but not in a rapid fashion. And it's expensive, but it machines beautifully.
Yeah, I've never done glass filled. I've done just normal peak and then carbon filled. And yeah, I agree. It machines really, really nicely. It's like Delrin, but a little more stable, I'd say, or easier to hold tolerance in at least.
Yes. For tight tolerant parts, it's really nice.
Yeah. So the next one was a little bit of a joke. I didn't understand until Sam kind of elaborated this morning. But Sam Wagoneer asked, when machining parts for a semiconductor, is it important to remove all the chips, or does that not matter?
Well, if Sam is doing the install, you can leave the chips in because he will pick them out of the machine where they fall. The joke behind that is I did a thread repair on a large, like 400 by 400 millimeter fixture plate for them, where we milled out a number of threads, put in a solid insert with new threads, Dutch keyed them in with set screws, Loctited it in, surface ground them flush. Then really, it came out really nice. And then he said, when I brought it back and he assembled it, he sent me photos of blue chips falling out of the plate into the probe card below it.
Oh no.
Well, I cleaned out all the holes that I redid, but not all the other holes in the plate.
No.
And he's pulling a joke on me for doing that for years now. With good reason.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those mistakes you probably won't make again. Nope. You know? I was wondering because when he asked the question and then showed the plate to me, he sent me the Instagram post. Yeah. I was like, how could you insert a hole and still have chips in it? But now it makes sense that it was not the holes you touched, it was the other ones.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it was a rush job over the weekend too.
Yeah.
I was happy to deliver it in time.
And then you said you Dutch keyed it in. What does that mean? I've never heard that phrase.
I think that, I'm not sure if that's the correct term. We put in a solid square insert into the plate.
Mm-hmm.
We glued it in with Loctite 648. But since we were scared that it might fall out for some or the other reason, right at the split line between the plate and the insert, I drilled holes, tapped them, and put in a set screw with Loctite again and bottomed the set screw out.
Oh, cool.
So to pull out the insert, you would have to shear the set screw in half.
Okay. So it's kind of like a makeshift key insert kind of thing almost.
Oh, yes. Yes, almost like that.
Okay. Very cool. I like that idea. And then the last question we had from the Discord, Magister Factotum asked, what would your shop look like if you had Dan Gelbert money?
I would hire Dan Gelbert to build me a shop. it would look a lot like it.
Okay. So along with that question, what are some dream machines that you have?
Yay! Well, for a manual mill, I would go for a Fielmann Picomax. It's basically a mill drill on a nice stand with digital readout, quick change tooling, and just a very precise Swiss mill. To room lathe, a Schaublin 135. It's basically the European equivalent of a Harding HLV or a Monarch EE10, just a little bit heavier.
Mm-hmm.
A grinder, probably a Young HF50. This is a fully automatic hydraulic surface grinder. CNC mill, I'm not sure. AVMC. Let's make Marvin happy. A Kern HT, Kern Micro HT, of course.
Of course.
Or a Rudos.
Which is not really a well-known brand, but now the more I see about them, they seem incredibly accurate.
They
Okay.
they were very early on with hard milling and grinding in the same machine. I'm not sure if they were the first ones, probably not, but they were very early on.
Yeah, I don't even know how it popped up looking at something, but they started popping up in like eBay searches and all that stuff in the last year or so, and I was like, oh, these are they. I mean, they seem like one of those companies that does not innovate with their controls or their machines, but they are just like obsessed with accuracy and automate, or not automation, but reliability and all that.
I wonder how much Marv will yell at me later on when he hears this.
Well, you'll have to let me know, because maybe he'll just yell at me instead and ask why did you keep that in the show?
That's perfect. So yeah, that some CNC mill. I would love to have a jig grinder.
Okay.
A Moore number 3 would be okay.
Would be okay. Yeah, it's okay.
It would double as a nice measuring machine.
Definitely.
We had one at work until 5 years ago. That's also where I bought the Moore rotary table from my day job.
Oh, interesting.
We had the rotary table, the large 300 something millimeter diameter rotary table in its mahogany case. And I was able to snag it for very little money.
That's fantastic. Well, that ends the question part. And then on to shop news and new things, which you got some new machinery. So what's going on?
Well, I bought a drill press.
Among some other things, yeah.
Yes. Well, first for the drill press, I needed just a drill press, so I bought a Chinese-made column drill press, floor standing drill, pillar drill press, I think it's called in the US, with a geared head, 100 to 3,000 RPM. It's just a very stout, large machine, and it will serve all my drilling needs from now on. And it's
Are you liking it so far?
Yes. It's nice to have a drill press along a milling machine. If you just need a hole, that's the most logical thing to use.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, especially if you're doing clearance holes for attachment purposes, like, mark where you need the hole and just drill it real quick.
Drill a hole. Even on CNC work, my CNC router does not have a tool changer, and if I have a part with a lot of different holes and threads, I might just spot drill the holes on the CNC and put it on the drill press later, while the CNC machine's the next part. That's my way of maximizing the output of a non-tool changing machine.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, that's the drill press. Very exciting machine. And I bought a surface grinder.
So talk to me about the surface grinder, because I went to the link right before the episode, and it seems, well, the verbiage they use, I don't know if it's just the English translation, but
the translation is horrible.
Yeah. It was a very interesting translation.
It's like a bubblefish or Google Translate is better.
Yeah, like the first sentence, which I just loved, is, why work with an expensive large grinding machine when you can use a small, less expensive one? I was like, well, okay.
It's a Bema FMS 260. It's a rather expensive machine. It still costs as much as a Haas mini mill.
Oh, wow.
Just to put it in perspective. And I needed a manual surface grinder that is very precise. Mine is, well, it's old. It's clapped out. I re-scraped the ways once already, but I have in the C-axis, I have some bow in the ways. I decided that it's time to buy a new machine. And the Bema grinder, it has a Schneeberger cross roller guide in all axes, not just in the table ways.
Oh, wow.
So wear is basically not a real issue with this machine. The table, it's a complete manual machine, so table stroke is manual and all the axes are manual. I bought it with a Heidenhain digital readout. I think it's the same one that Adam has on his manual grinder, the touch display Euro.
Mm-hmm.
Chain drive for the table. So there is not much on this machine that can break. It's, well, if it doesn't rust away, I will have it until until my end.
Right. That's great. So what's, because there's also some interesting layout perspectives on it too. What made you choose this one versus, well, I guess you said there's not many small manual grinders available.
Yes. It's not like a traditional surface grinder where you look on a normal surface grinder, you stand in front of the wheel and you see the round shape of the wheel. On this grinder, you sit in front, you sit at the face of the grinder and look at the circumference of the wheel. The wheel spins, of course, in a way so the sparks and the parts that you snag off the magnet fly away from you.
I sure hope so. I was just thinking that. I was like, there's no way.
That would be a little bit dangerous.
Yeah.
And you basically look at the grinding wheel and you can see very exactly when it touches the work, or when you approach a sidewall, when you do side wheeling, or when you do form grinding. So for small work where you have to do optical pickup on edges, that's very ergonomic layout. On a normal surface grinder, you always have to move your head somewhere between the splash guard on the left and the wheel, on the spindle head, and try to get your head in there and not die.
Right. Well, and I imagine this is fairly space efficient for the size shop you have.
Yes. That's also a reason why I decided on this machine. And it's completely built here in Germany. They use pretty much all German or European components. It's not a cast machine. The frame is welded out of thick plate steel.
Oh, interesting.
And stress relieved and milled ground. And all the other parts are steel too.
That's really interesting. I'm surprised. So are you doing more and more grinding work, and that's why you looked for a new?
Yes.
Okay.
I try to do. I do more grinding work, and I try to concentrate on it. Grinding is nice because, Adam said this once. Tooling cost of grinding is very low. An aluminum oxide grinding wheel for $30 will get you very, very long way.
Oh yeah, I bet. Yeah, you could just keep dressing it. It's not like I can't dress my end mills when they wear out.
And a hard cut end mill for $50. Well, that's off to regrind if you don't break it.
Right. That's really cool. That is excellent. And then I don't know, it was a couple months ago you got your hardness tester. You've got a full video series for people who are more interested, but is that working out for you?
Yes, hardness tester is nice to have in the shop. Not only for checking parts that are hardened myself or had hardened outside, but also if I get parts to modify. It's nice what you're dealing with before you cut into it.
Definitely. Yeah, Brad and I were just talking about looking for a used one the other day because we occasionally, more often than I'd like, get customer supplied material. And, they say it's one thing and you're like, yeah, but is it that? So I would love to have one for that reason.
They don't take much space. They're very simple machines. If you don't crack or break the diamond, there is not much to them.
Right. Yeah, you can buy calibration plates. You can buy new points for them, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that takes me to the last question I ask every guest, which is, what did you research this week?
Well, this week, graphic cards, which is currently a complete mess.
Yes. Yes, it is. So what are you looking for, and what did you end up getting?
So this is completely machining or CAD unrelated. Battlefield 2042 got released, and my ancient NVIDIA 1050 Ti is is just not cutting it. So I was looking for a graphics card, and I was looking for reasonable high end, and also being able to get it delivered soonish.
Right, sometime this year.
Yeah, and yes, and I settled on an NVIDIA RTX 3060.
Okay, and you were actually able to find one that wasn't crazy price inflated.
It's crazy priced, but it comes in tomorrow.
Okay,
which is nice.
That is the trade-off, yeah.
But it will also do very nice for Fusion.
Yeah. So, actually, I was reading recently that people were saying that gaming graphics cards are better than Quadros for Fusion.
Than the Quadro cards. The Quadro cards seem to be... I used to have them. We have them in the PCs at work. And also I used to have one in my own PC here at the desk. And to be honest, when I changed it to the 1050 Ti, it was like night and day.
Really?
Yes. It was just way faster.
I've heard that the Quadros only really work if it's optimized for. There's no point in having one.
That seems to be very true, yes. And also some CAD package manufacturers also specify that you should have a CAD graphic card, either NVIDIA or does ATI, AMD do CAD graphic cards?
I think they do. I'm spacing on the brand name for them, but I think they do as well.
But they have, okay. Yes, some CAD packages specify a graphic card.
Yeah, I think SolidWorks does, if I remember right.
Okay.
But yeah, that's cool. I haven't seen much about the new Battlefield, but I'm interested.
Well, it's Battlefield.
Sure. Right.
It's completely broken still. It's glitching. It's a mess as usual.
Yeah, I was gonna say that seems to be the way forward for every game right now.
But it's fun. It's fun. The gunplay is nice. It's handling nice and crisply. So, well, I will probably spend some time in it.
Awesome. Well, Stefan, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. It was great to get to catch up with you and everything. Thanks to all the Patreons who support the channel so I can organize great interviews with people like you. And thanks everyone for listening. I'll be back next week.